Alright, for this next tutorial, we want to look at how to enter the home office deduction for a self-employed taxpayer. So we've got TurboTax 2022 version here, the self-employed version. It's the online cloud-based version. And so we've already completed a lot of elements of the taxpayer's return, and now we're going to go back and see how we can enter the home office deduction. So just to give you a sense of where we are as of now, let me pull up the return. We'll do a print preview here, and we can take a look at the Schedule C and then see where the home office deduction elements are going to be entered. So if I pull up John Taxpayer's return here, this is page 1 of his return. The real schedule we're after here is Schedule C. So our taxpayer here runs a consulting business. So we have John Taxpayer here, Schedule C, consulting business. So we've already entered the income and expenses apart from the home office deduction. So John Taxpayer here runs a consulting business. He does it all through John Taxpayer Consulting LLC. So that's a single member LLC that's a disregarded entity. So that's why the information is being reported here on Schedule C. Now, if we scroll down here, you can see we've got a little bit of income, some expenses, and line 30 is currently blank, but this is where we're going to see some numbers populated once we complete the home office deduction information. So when you claim home office deduction expenses, you're not entering them up here. Okay, so the items that are entered up here in lines 8 through 27A, these are expenses that are directly related to your trade or business. The home office expenses are expenses that are really part of your home, your home or your rental property, but you're allocating a piece of that to your business. Up here are expenses 100% related to that trade or business. Okay, so let's go back to TurboTax, and namely we want to start with the slide here and cover what we'll be addressing in this tutorial. So what we're going to cover in this video is some of the basics on home office deduction. So who can take it, what are kind of the rules and the limitations. And specifically, we're going to look at how to claim the home office deduction using the simplified method. And that's for a rental home, right? So rather than you being the actual homeowner. And the reason why that's important is because what we'll see is the home office deduction, you can use either the simplified method or the actual expenses method. And using the actual expenses method can vary quite a bit, whether you're renting or you actually own the home, either outright or you're paying in a mortgage, because there are things like depreciation and other expenses that you otherwise wouldn't get if you were just a rental homeowner. Okay, so next slide here. Again, we're looking at the home office expense. We're going to cover the simplified method in the tutorial. But just some background again on the fact pattern and the home office deduction eligibility here. So what we've got here, John Q. Taxpayer, sales agent in Florida, and he also has this part-time consulting business. So he completed the Schedule C to report the business income and expenses, and now wants to explore how to claim that home office deduction. So John here, he rents his house, right? So he rents a single-family home for $1,400 a month, and he's also responsible for paying his own utilities, right? So he pays the internet, electricity, rental insurance, all those types of things that go along with renting a property. Now, he runs his consulting business exclusively from his home office, right? So in the age of remote work, he's just doing everything remotely, has a little home office set up in his single-family home, and that's where he does his work from. Now, the size of the office, dimension-wise, is 150 square feet. And what we'll see is that is very important for both methods, simplified and actual expenses, because you need to know the size of the office relative to the whole size of the property, right? The home itself. Okay. And then the single family home collectively is 2,200 feet. So let's look at some home office deductibility rules. So the first rule, and this is really important, is the office has to be used exclusively and regularly as the principal place of business. Okay, now when we say regular use, we mean, to state the obvious, it has to be used regularly, and it cannot be incidental or occasional. So what that means is if you do some work from home, but 90% of the time you're doing the same work from an actual office location, well, you can't really take the home office deduction because you're not using it on a regular basis, and it's more of like an occasional, oh, I use my office from home for work, right? It doesn't really look like it's regular use. It's more just occasional or incidental to your principal activity. The other piece, it has to be used exclusively for that home office. What that means is if you have a home office, it can also be a game room. Okay, so you can't have a TV and couch in there where people come in and you sit down and you watch like a football game or something like that. That's not going to work, right? It's got to look like an office. Like, what would an office be used for? It can't double as a guest bedroom. It's really got to be used exclusively for business. Now, the other element, and this is also really important, the home office has to be the principal place of business, right? Meaning that, again, similar to this issue up here with the regular use, if you kind of split your time between home office and another location, well, it's not your principal place of business. Now, the exceptions for that are, well, if you actually have a customer or a client meet you at your home, that's fine. That's enough to tip you over that edge to where you can still claim the home office expense. But what most people do to get around this issue is you bifurcate the responsibilities. So your home office is used for, let's say, administrative or management activities, and then you go outside of the home to do other kind of business-related tasks. So the simplest example, which is part of the IRS publication, is a plumber, right? So if we have Adam works as a plumber, obviously as a plumber, he's constantly visiting customers' homes to perform plumbing services, right, repairs. You can't do that from home. So Adam clearly, he's doing most of the work outside of his home, but he also has a home office where he does all of his admin. He does his scheduling, he does his books, his taxes, takes phone calls. That's okay, right? So he might spend 98% of his working hours outside of his house, but if his home office and his home is used for these administrative and managerial activities, then that's okay. He can still take the home office deduction. All right. Now, the deduction methods, right? So again, we have the simplified method or the actual expenses. Simplified method is nice because you don't really have to track expenses for the home and the home office. It's just calculated based on the square footage of the office. So for 2022, the rate is $5 per square foot, and it's capped at $1,500. So in other words, you can't have a home office bigger than 300 square feet. They won't let you deduct that much. But obviously, this is appealing because you don't have to track rent, utilities, allocations of insurance, all that kind of stuff. You just say, well, my home office is X square feet, multiply by $5, and that's my deduction. Versus the actual expenses method, you have to track all of that, and then you still use the square footage of your home office relative to the total. So in this example, let's say you have a 200 square foot office and your home is 2,000 square feet, you can claim a deduction for 10% of those total costs, right? That's fine. You can do that. But we want to explore this idea, at least in this video, the simplified method. So we'll look at the simplified method here on TurboTax, and then we'll look at actual expense methods in the subsequent videos. All right, so let's actually go into TurboTax and start to go through the prompts on computing the simplified method. All right, so if we go back to TurboTax here, so if we're in the wages and income section, we can click on the self-employed section, right? So self-employed income and expenses. So we're going to go in here, and again, we've already entered the Schedule C information for his consulting business. So now we just have to edit the piece that covers the home office expense. So we can see here, we had an expense category, home office. We're going to go ahead and start this. If you don't see home office in here, then you can add expenses, and then there is a home office category. So if you don't see home office in your expense section, that's fine. Just go back to add expenses, and then it'll allow you to add a section for home office costs. So in our case, we're just going to go ahead and start this prompt. and asks us a couple of yes or no questions, right? Do we have a home office? Yes. And do you have more than one home office in 2022? No, right? So we only had one throughout the whole year. Now, obviously, that's important because remember, the home office expense is based on the size of the office relative to the total of the property. So you can imagine, if you're in an apartment for 6 months of the year, and then you leave that apartment, move to a house, and you have a new home office, the size of the office is going to change, right? The size of the office is going to change. The size of the total property is going to change. So that's why they want to know if you have more than one, because you're going to have to enter information for 2 properties or more, right? If you moved even more than that. So no, we just had the one. Did any of these situations apply, right? So we did not share with another person. It's asking, I use this home office for my consulting work and another line of work. And remember, this is important because it's all about splitting costs, right? If you use a home office for multiple different businesses, then you should be allocating those home office costs among multiple different businesses, right? You shouldn't just be plugging it all to one of them. In our case, no, right? We just have this one consulting business, so none of these issues apply. Name of the home office, so you can give it a creative name or just do kind of your home address. We're just going to do 123 street address. Obviously not a real address, but that's where John lives. So some more yes or no questions here. Was this home office used for work only and nothing else? Remember, that's the exclusive use, right? It's got to be used exclusively for the home office work. It can't double as a game room, or it can't double as, an entertainment room or a bar or a guest bedroom. None of that's going to work. Did we regularly use this home office? Remember, yes. It has to be regular use. It can't be incidental or just a periodic use of the office. You have to use it on a regular basis. Was the home office the primary place of work? In our case, we can answer yes to this, right? So John used that office exclusively for his consulting business, and he doesn't have any other locations where he did his work. He doesn't travel a lot for work. He doesn't have another rented office space. He doesn't go to customers or clients' homes to do that work. Everything is just done from that office. Okay, and it's telling us here, now based on this info, we qualify for the deduction. That's great. When did we start using the home office? So we are going to say that he started using it at the very start of the year. So Jan 1, 2022. Now the reason why you want to be very careful when entering this start date, because that's also going to determine the proration of the expenses. So obviously if you started using the home office in the last few months of the year, you can't take an allocation of a full year's worth of expenses, right? There's a proration there. In our case, to make it simple, we're just going to assume that he started it on Jan 1, 2022, so he's going to get a full year. And then here it is, right? They ask us again, how many months did you use this for at least 15 days? So all 12 months, and this is the regular use issue, right? So and if you need more information, these prompts are pretty helpful. So it says, why are you asking? If I click on that, it says, okay, why are we asking this? The amount of the home office deduction is based on square footage of the office in comparison to the total, right? Plus how often the home office was used for work each month. If you used it at least 15 days each month, you get credit for the whole month. If your home office was used fewer than 15 days, you do not get credit for that month, right? So it's this greater than 50% test. You have to have used the office more than half the days in the month in order to get this, or else you're not going to be able to qualify. All right, so we're going to hit continue. What percentage of your work for consulting was done at the home office? So for us, it's 100. All right, what was the size of the home office? So remember, the home office square footage size was 150 square feet, and the whole house that was rented was 2,200. So we have 150 square feet. 2,200 is the entire home. Gonna go ahead and click continue. Okay, so it's giving us the simplified deduction first, right? Which is what we want for this video. So it's telling us the simplified home office deduction is $750. That is the 150, so 150 square feet times $5 per square foot. That's how they're getting that $750. Yep, so it says the simplest way to write this off. It's called the simplified deduction. Option does not require receipts or records of home expenses like the actual expense method does, right? And that's very important for some taxpayers because they might not have these records. If that's the case, you can actually prove the size of the office, so just take that. So it says, do you want to use the simplified method? We're going to say yes, right? So we want to continue using the simplified deduction. In the subsequent videos, we'll look at the actual expenses. And now it says here, what's the best option for me, right? So you can, if you have receipts and records, you can use the actual expenses, and then you want to compute the actual expense allocation and see if it's greater, right? I mean, if you have a greater expense allocation using actual and you have the support for it, then you probably want to do that. But in this case, we're just doing the simplified deduction, so we're going to move forward with this. All right, so home office deduction is $750. Going to continue on through. And now what we're going to do is we want to look at the return updated here. I want to look at the updated forms, and I want to talk about the expense limitations a bit as well. So if we go into the return, view and print, let me expand this a bit to make it easier to see. So now I'm going to jump down to Schedule C. Oops, sorry. Okay, so here's Schedule C again. You notice that nothing has changed up here in lines 1 through 27A, right? So we still have the income, the expenses. The home office deduction element is entered down here on line 30. So if we're claiming the actual expenses, you have to attach the 8829. We're not doing that. We're only using the simplified method. So as it notes here, we can enter total square footage of the home, total use or business, and then multiply that by that $5 for 2022, and we get our $750 amount, right, on line 30. Now, talk briefly about the expense limitations. Your home office deduction is limited to this profit down here on line 29. You see here the tentative profit is $2,550. Our home office expenses is $750, so we have enough profit to wipe that out. If your profit is lower than this, then it's limited to the profit amount. Okay, so you can't take a deduction for home office expenses to create a loss. Let me put it that way, right? So if you don't have enough profits, the home office expense deduction, you don't get it. You do get to carry over the actual expenses, so you can do that. But in this case, it's not an issue. It's a moot issue because we have some profit, so we get a full deduction for the home office expense. We will have a video later where we look at this phase out, right? What happens if we do have not enough profit or a loss and we have home office expenses? How do we carry forward those amounts? So that covers it for this video. Hope that was helpful. If you have any questions, obviously feel free to leave me a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you on the next series. Thanks.